If you raise prices, why are you raising prices? How are you changing the value proposition to your customers? Are you better? If you're better, you can charge a higher price. But if you're not, that's the facts. You can't charge a higher price than your competitor because the customer will switch like this.
Hi, I'm Nishant Garg with WhatMarketWants. My guest for today specializes in pricing strategy. He has over 2 decades of work experience. He has worked with several companies ranging from startups to Fortune 500 companies. He's a professor at DePaul University. He is the author of the book Pricing Done Right. Let's welcome Tim J. Smith. Hi.
Hi, Nishant. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
So Tim, tell us, from PhD in physical chemistry to master's in strategy and marketing, how did that happen?
Well, I completed my PhD from the University of Chicago, studying quantum mechanics applied to femtosecond spectroscopy. And it was a wonderful job. I enjoyed it a lot. But when I finished, I had to figure out what else I could do. So I moved on into software. I was a coding and software designer for a while. 2001 came around and the software industry basically imploded. So at that point, I had completed my MBA and had moved on to more of a marketing and pricing orientation.
All right. So I was going through your profile where you have mentioned that you have worked with companies from all over the world. And there is a list specifying the names of continents you serve, which includes North America, Latin America, Europe, Asia, Africa. So my question to you is, why not Australia?
I have done work down in Australia. I just think of it as part of the Asian Pacific area.
A lot of Australians might be offended by that. So tell us, you have been working in this industry for more than 2 decades now. How often do you come across companies using a flawed pricing strategy?
Every day, every single day. And you can read about it in the newspaper, so you can see it with actual companies, where they're just having problems managing pricing appropriate to the market. Like, for instance, right now, we're going through a period of relatively higher inflation on commodities, meaning pork, beef, wheat, corn, things that are input into our food chain. And that, if the price of corn goes up, that drives up the price of making a chicken. That drives up the price of making your corn flakes, your cereal, your corn syrup, which drives up the price of a Coca-Cola. And I'm looking at these consumer packaged goods companies fretting over whether or not they can or cannot, whether they can raise prices and keep it aligned with the cost increase. And I'm thinking, well, if you can't, you're basically acknowledging that your customers don't actually value you. And there's questions about this, problems. Yeah.
So how often do you see businesses losing money due to clumsy pricing?
Oh, all the time. When companies do cost plus pricing, they're either leaving money on the table with every transaction because the customer would have been willing to pay more, or the cost plus price leads to a price that's too high, and then the customers don't buy it. So it's either too high for half the customers or it's too low for the other half, and they don't actually think about what is the value being delivered by that offering to my chosen market segment. And they just lose money, leave money on the table, right and left. Or they make discounts and tactical negotiations over rebates, and they concede too much on pricing because the salesperson's after just simply revenue. And revenue and profit are not the same thing. So I like to focus on profit here.
So true. Could you give us a few examples of companies that come to your mind when you think about pricing done wrong?
I could, but I don't want to irritate too many of the companies that I work with, that I approach. But it's just common. It's common. On the opposite side, you have companies like Nissan trying to think about design of the products, focused on what is the value of having that design on the product so that they get that design done right. Procter & Gamble also talks about working from the customer backwards to determine what the product would be. And these approaches work better. But when you instead build it and they will come, well, you can build it. That doesn't mean you've made something that they want. So you really need to iterate and think about what the customers really need rather than what you dream the customer should want. So
Build it and they will come. That's such a common myth. So tell us, what other conventional methods of pricing do you see companies using? One is cost plus pricing, as you mentioned. What are the other methods?
There's a number of market research techniques that one can utilize to determine what customers should be willing to pay for a product. But even before you get to market research, there's a simple thought experiment that one should do. And the thought experiment is known at Harvard as it's called economic value to the customer. And you're asking the question, well, why should a customer purchase this? What is this doing for the customer? If they don't buy from me, what do they buy from? In every situation, in free markets, customers have choices. That's the beauty of free markets. You have competition. So the customer will always be evaluating your offering, your service, your product, in relationship to their alternative. And their alternative may be to do nothing, but you need to understand how your offer stacks up to what the customer is considering their alternative. Are you better? Are you worse? If you're better, you can charge a higher price. If you're worse, you got to charge a lower price. And is that differentiation something the customer actually cares about? Often you find differentiation, which nobody actually cares about.
So what's the better alternative? What's the right way of pricing things?
Well, I'm sorry, I was answering the wrong question in the prior one. Economic value to customer is a great way to price. If you have the time and the budget, you can then conduct market research, collect information directly from customers through focus groups or one-on-one interviews. You can test prices and measure price expectation with a Garg Granger or Van Westendorp price sensitivity meter. Neither technique will actually tell you the price that customers are willing to pay, but they will tell you what customers are thinking of. The best way of actually measuring price willingness to pay would be a conjoint analysis or a choice-based type system, advanced market research technique. Those, however, are useful mostly in consumer markets. They're difficult to do in many business markets because it's hard to get 1,000 businesses to respond to a survey when your market only has 25 customers.
Pricing is clearly a very complex subject. So if I ask you to narrow it down, what are the 3 key elements of pricing your products and services the right way?
Ask the question from the customer's viewpoint. From the customer's viewpoint, you ask the questions. What is my alternative? Are you better or worse? And do I care about that difference? All we're trying to do in pricing is answer those 3 questions.
Okay. Could you give us an example to elaborate your point?
One of the common examples I give is the GE Evolution Series locomotive. It came out in 2005. It was the way I would describe it to many people is think about a Tesla in the form of a train, or maybe a Toyota Prius. It was a hybrid train. The role of the locomotive engine was to reduce the amount of diesel required in the course of a year. It would save roughly 4 million liters of diesel in a year. Well, how much is that worth? Diesel, of course, costs money. So you have a lot of value being created by saving the train companies diesel. You also have the emotional issue about green society and trying to clean up our environment, which are wonderful issues. But you can calculate the value of the million gallons of, or 4 million liters of diesel being saved a year. You can calculate that the diesel locomotive usually lasts 25 to 50 years. So you can put a lifetime value on that. You can identify how much of that value you wish to share with the customers and how much you wish to capture through price. And if they're buying the GE locomotive Evolution Series, they're not buying a different train. So we have The fact that I'm not buying an alternative, that's, $1 million to $2 million, and I'm saving fuel. That's, $5, $20 million, depends on how you calculate it. You may have some changes like maintenance cost or something of that nature, but you can also calculate that. You can calculate how much a train company should be willing to pay for the Evolution Series locomotive. You can even calculate how it would vary between a train company doing long haul versus short haul. How much is the locomotive used? Is it sitting idle or is it constantly being used? What's its useful productive lifetime? And you can segment the market.
So how do the rules change when you're pricing your products versus pricing your services?
Well, if you're doing cost plus pricing, you just think about them in terms of the cost of making the tangible or the cost of providing the service on an annual basis, on an hourly basis, and then you try to mark it up from there. That, like I said, is problematic. You're usually leaving money on the table. In both cases, people have had more success with this value-based pricing, with this way of thinking about, what is the customer thinking? So here in Chicago, for instance, some innovative lawyer decided to come up with a $10,000 fixed price divorce. So if you want a divorce, you pay $10,000 and he'll make it happen. And usually his customers are looking for a simple divorce. There's not huge complications, and he's making lots of money, far more money than he would have if he had calculated his annual rate and brought it down to an hourly rate and just charged them on that. Speaking about which, services, like professional services. And the truth is most professional services is a total fixed cost industry. Unless you can hire and fire people on the time, on the dime, you're looking at hiring somebody and keeping them employed and developed over the course of the year. It's a total fixed cost system, which implies there is no variable cost really in many service industries. It's all fixed. And if there's no variable cost, then what's your cost plus? So they do jiggery with cost plus pricing of services. Similarly with products, actual tangibles, thinking about it in terms of the value that you're creating is far more useful than thinking about it in just how much did it cost to produce. Because I deal with companies where sometimes their margins are 5% and other times their margins are 95%. It just depends on what product they're selling. But if they did cost plus pricing, everything would have had a margin of, say, 20%. And that would have been inappropriate for the market.
Since you work with a lot of startups and small businesses as well, you may get this question: what if we raise our prices? Why would people buy from us and not our competitors? How do you tackle that?
Well, that is the question I actually have to push back on. If you raise prices, why are you raising prices? How are you changing the value proposition to your customers? Are you better? If you're better, you can charge a higher price. But if you're not, that's the facts. You can't charge a higher price than your competitor because the customer will switch like this. So it's actually a harsh reality check for management to ask and answer the question, what are we delivering to our customers that they really can't get from somebody else? Why is that important to our customers? Why are our customers buying from us?
Okay.
These are hard questions.
You talked about differentiating, redefining your value proposition. So that sort of goes beyond pricing strategy and comes into the marketing territory, right?
It falls into the realm of pricing. You sometimes address it directly through pricing, but I find that I work best working with salespeople, marketing, and finance people to help drive the price. Each one of those groups, and sometimes more, holds specific information that can inform the price you can capture. But the differentiation has to lie somewhere, and someone has to know where it is. So you ask.
Fair enough. Tell us, what are your favorite business and marketing books?
Oh, there's lots of them. Don't have my library in front of me, so I don't have the questions. I really enjoyed reading reading Hull's book on option swaps, futures, and other financial derivatives, which is not in your area. I enjoyed reading Thinking Fast and Slow. That was a good way of thinking about markets. Pricing on Purpose was one of the other books I enjoyed reading. There are many books.
So who do you look up to in your industry, in the pricing consultancy space? Who do you look up to?
One of the people I really respect is Ron Baker. And another one would be Reed Holden.
Okay. And any specific reason that you like these particular two guys?
Reed Holden is an extremely decent human being. And he has worked hard in pricing for many years. He's now moving more into a sales negotiation. He wrote a book called Negotiating with Backbone, which I think was a great book. He has been moving forward in business markets for his career to try to improve pricing and improve price capture and help his clients. Ron Baker, I like his work because it's philosophically sound. It's sort of like the work of Amartya Sen on justice. His book is on, what is a price and a good price represent. It was a philosophical treatise in some degrees. Are you familiar with Amartya Sen?
No, not really.
Nobel Prize economist based in India.
Okay.
You should read his book. It's good.
Which one specifically?
I think it's called On Justice, but I'm not sure.
So tell us, what do you think about price wars? Companies lowering their prices just to capture market share?
I don't eat off of market share. I eat off of profits. Profits measured in actual currency, not in percentages of gross margins. So I'm focused more on how do I make profits, not just how do I grow big. That said, the stock market sometimes rewards companies just simply for being very large. Sometimes, and CEOs respond, and sometimes the CEOs are simply looking for revenue, or they're simply looking for how many people engage their platform. That's valid because that's what the stock market is doing. I wish to remind people that, Amazon did not make money for the first 20, 25 years of its existence. It didn't start to make money until it tripped over Amazon Web Services. So it's a way to grow big. And if you can convince investors to give you money for 10, 20 years, great, go for it. WeWork did that for about 7 years, and WeWork roughly imploded, though. So that can also lead to great disasters. You have to think, what is it I'm after? How do I get rewarded? I think in India, a company called Oyo
rooms.
Yeah, they also imploded by just simply going for how many rooms they have. But what good are rooms if nobody's staying in them, if they can't make any money off of them? Oh, yeah, they go out of business, or they, declare bankruptcy or something of that nature. Something problematic happens.
So this method is clearly not feasible for a company that's bootstrapped.
Yeah, if you're bootstrapped, you got to make money every time, every single part of the way. If you, can convince venture capitalists to give you a lot of cash for a, shot at the moon, that's a different game. Research on highly successful entrepreneurs. We're talking entrepreneurs who grew a business from nothing to 200 million a year in revenue, 200 million US dollars, that is, in 5 years or roughly, or had done this sequentially. Research showed that those highly successful entrepreneurs priced their product very high, went after the few customers that were willing to pay for it, and then spread their market instead of going the opposite direction. And when you think about Salesforce.com, when it first came out, it wasn't the cheapest thing in the world. It's still not cheap today, but it's definitely overtaken the CRM room.
Okay. Tell us about your book, Pricing Done Right. What inspired you to write that?
Well, I've previously written a textbook called Pricing Strategy. Right. It was a textbook to teach people how to do pricing. It's a successful textbook, and students who use it report they learned something, they got a lot out of it. That's great. Training students on how to do pricing correct is one aspect. Getting a CEO to acknowledge I actually need to do pricing properly is a different problem. So while the Pricing strategy was aimed at the manager to analyst to help them learn how to do their job better. Pricing done right was aimed squarely at the CEO and the boardroom to state why you need to actually stop doing cost plus and think about pricing from a different viewpoint. There's a lot of money to be made. And I enjoyed the research of finding good examples that seemed relatable on the issue. If I recall correctly, I looked at the Vespa being launched there in India and how successful that was when it was relaunched.
Oh, interesting. Can you recall any other examples from your book?
I do recall talking about Grainger, I think GE and a few other companies as well.
Superb. It was nice talking to you, Tim. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you, Nishant. This has been a pleasure.
For those of you who want to learn more, you must check out his book, Pricing Done Right. You'll find the link in the description to get more such great insights from the world of business, branding, and marketing. Subscribe, follow What Market Wants on social media, and let me help you unlock your market potential. Take care.